Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take these sprawling corporate histories and complex technical reports and really just give you the distilled essence, the key knowledge you need to be informed fast.
And today, we're looking at what you could call a corporate miracle, or maybe a forced evolution.
I like that, a forced evolution. We are witnessing the dizzying speed of the modern mobility revolution, but we're seeing it captured in the history of a single company.
It really is a textbook case of truly radical and forced reinvention. Think about the scale of this challenge for a second.
Okay.
How does a company that spent its entire existence, stamping out heavy metal components and managing these massive manufacturing footprints for 20th century Detroit, how does that company become a global leader in autonomous driving software?
And vehicle connectivity, high-speed data architecture. It seems impossible.
That's the core, fascinating question we're digging into today.
Okay, let's unpack this. We are deep diving into Aptiv PLC. And if you, the listener, don't immediately recognize that name, Aptiv, you are absolutely familiar with their immediate legacy.
Oh, for sure. Delphi Automotive.
Exactly, Delphi, which itself emerged from the sprawling, vertically integrated guts of General Motors. It is an incredibly complex, dramatic, and honestly a painful lineage.
It truly is. Our mission today is to cut through that complexity and trace a strategic transformation. We've gone through the sources, detailing Aptiv's history, its financials, corporate strategy, right up to early 2025.
So we're going to trace this company's journey all the way from being a colossal GM component division
Through a near-death bankruptcy and massive legal turbulence.
and into its current role as a crucial, nearly $20 billion revenue technology supplier, a member of the S&P 500.
And the numbers today, they immediately tell you this isn't some niche player anymore, not by a long shot.
No. This company is publicly traded on the NYSE, the New York Stock Exchange, under the ticker APTV. And as we said, it's a component of the S&P 500 index.
Which is a huge vote of confidence from the market.
Right. And as of the 2024 financials, the revenue sat at a staggering U.S. $19.71 billion. That's supported by a workforce of 141,000 employees operating globally.
And we have to pay attention to the location details because they really do symbolize the entire story. The company is currently headquartered in Schaffhausen, Switzerland.
Right. And it's led by Chairman and CEO Kevin P. Clark. But that geographic shift itself, that tells a story.
It tells the whole story. Starting in Detroit, moving to the UK after the bankruptcy, then to Ireland, and now relocating to Switzerland. It tells you this story is fundamentally about strategic global corporate mobility.
For their products and for their balance sheet.
Exactly. This is a company that literally physically moved away from its origins to survive and then to thrive.
I think that sets the stage perfectly. It's a company defined by movement, but to appreciate the depth of that transformation, we have to go all the way back to the beginning.
To the Detroit roots.
Let's start there.
The story officially begins in 1994, and it begins inside really the most classic structure of American manufacturing you can imagine, General Motors.
Right. This was the moment GM created what they called the Automotive Components Group.
Yeah, the ACG.
But why then? Why 1994? It seems a little counterintuitive for a company that had always prided itself on doing literally everything in-house. Was this just about business efficiency, or was there more pressure at play?
Well, it was a confluence of factors, really driven by market realities. For decades, GM had adhered to this strategy of vertical integration.
They owned everything.
Everything.
Right.
From the iron ore mines and the smelting plants all the way to the final assembly line. And that gave them great quality control, in the 50s and 60s.
Sure.
But by the 1990s, it made them incredibly inflexible. It was expensive, bureaucratic, and a constant target for union friction and, frankly, antitrust sentiment. They were just too big.
So creating the Automotive Components Group was a major shift away from that model. They were trying to unlock value, I guess, and create a supplier that could actually compete externally, outside of just filling GM orders.
Precisely. That was the idea, at least. Spinning it off created a separate entity that was supposed to function as an independent, standalone, globally competitive supplier. But, they had to give it an identity first.
And that transition happened really quickly. In 1995, just a year later, the Automotive Components Group officially changed its name to Delphi Automotive Systems.
And what's fascinating when you look at the sources is the sheer depth and the variety of the internal manufacturing capabilities that were just lumped together under that one Delphi umbrella.
Right. These weren't just random parts divisions. These were the proprietary historical component names that have been synonymous with General Motors quality for, what, half a century?
At least. When you look at the 6 main divisions that formed Delphi, you realize they covered almost every single essential physical system in a vehicle. It was the entire electromechanical infrastructure of the GM fleet, all combined into a single new entity.
And it was absolutely colossal in scale.
Colossal.
Let's run down that list because it fundamentally emphasizes the pre-tech, heavy industry identity of early Delphi. This is where the weight of the 20th century lay.
Okay, so starting with connectivity, you had Packard Electric, a legendary name. It became Delphi Packard Electric Systems.
And this was massive. We're talking about all the wiring, the connectors, the complex bundles of cables that ran throughout the entire vehicle.
It was a fundamental but still very heavy connectivity architecture. In the 90s, the focus was on durability and basic power distribution, not gigabits of data throughput like today.
Not at all. And then you have the very structure of the vehicle. Delco chassis became Delphi chassis systems.
And when you say chassis, that means structure, suspension, brakes, all the related systems, the fundamental mechanical bones of the car. These are massive, heavy, complex things to manufacture.
A lot of steel.
A lot of steel, a lot of casting and forging. Then moving inside the car, Inland Fisher Guide transformed into Delphi interior and lighting systems.
This covered huge high-volume parts. Things like seats, internal trim, dashboards, exterior lighting systems.
All high volume, but also low margin, and totally dependent on huge presses and giant assembly lines.
And the crucial steering component. Saginaw became Delphi Saginaw steering systems.
Right, providing those critical mechanical and hydraulic steering linkages. Again, a very heavy mechanical engineering focus, not a lot of software there.
No. For climate control, which is essential to any modern car, Harrison Radiator was folded in as Delphi Harrison Thermal Systems.
These were the cooling and heating specialists. So you're dealing with radiators, air conditioning compressors, and complex fluid dynamics. Lots of plumbing.
And finally, the traditional powertrain powerhouse. The division that became Delphi Energy and Engine Management Systems, which emerged from the famous AC Delco division.
Yeah, and this encompassed everything related to the combustion process. We're talking spark plugs, ignition systems, fuel injection, basic engine electronics. They were managing the physical explosion of gasoline.
So if you synthesize all those former GM divisions, the initial core identity of Delphi was crystal clear.
Utterly. They were one of the largest, truly global manufacturers of essential, heavy, high-volume vehicle components. The challenge, however, and this was a huge challenge,
Was that this new company carried the massive overhead, the immense union obligations, and the inflexible corporate culture of GM.
but without the financial safety net of being a wholly owned subsidiary anymore, they were cut loose.
So Delphi was designed to be independent, but practically, it was still heavily reliant on GM orders. That accounted for a huge percentage of its early revenue.
It was a deeply flawed premise right from the start. They were too big, too bureaucratic, and way too dependent on one single customer.
And that reliance, I'm guessing, it masked some pretty serious structural and financial problems.
It did. And those problems, combined with some serious corporate misconduct, would eventually bring the whole operation to a dramatic, screeching halt, this gargantuan entity. It was basically set up to fail spectacularly.
It sounds like a corporate behemoth just carrying the weight of 20th century industrial scale.
Yeah.
It's really setting the stage for one of the most dramatic corporate collapses in recent memory.
And that is exactly where we head next.
The foundation of the old Delphi, as you said, was structurally shaky. But the immediate crisis, the thing that actually led to its collapse in 2005, was entirely financial. It was centered on corporate integrity.
That's right.
What exactly went wrong with the books?
Well, the crisis was triggered by the disclosure of seriously irregular accounting practices. And we're not talking about small errors here. These pointed to systematic financial mismanagement.
Designed to do what?
Designed to inflate earnings and hide financial distress. We're talking about the improper reporting of rebates, credits, or other payments from suppliers. They were effectively just moving numbers around to make the balance sheet look much healthier than it actually was.
This sounds like a corporate triage scenario.
Yeah.
And this is where it gets really disastrous. What was the immediate fallout when these practices were finally disclosed?
The internal crisis was immediate, and it was swift. It showed just how serious the breach was. We saw these high-profile resignations, starting with the CFO, Alan Dawes.
Okay.
And he was immediately followed by the chairman, J.T. Battenberg. Both of them retired right in the middle of this brewing scandal.
And when your top leadership bails out simultaneously like that, the market knows the problem is existential.
Exactly. And the consequence was existential. Delphi filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection to try and reorganize its staggering U.S. operations.
And this wasn't just a simple restructuring. The New York Stock Exchange took immediate action.
They did. They delisted Delphi's common stock and its bonds.
And the delisting is, that's the corporate equivalent of an immediate cardiac arrest.
It is. It means the company, as it existed, could no longer participate in public markets. They essentially entered a corporate coma where only the bankruptcy courts could decide their ultimate fate.
And while the bankruptcy focused on the U.S. operations, the fallout was absolutely global and impacted thousands and thousands of people immediately.
That's where the human cost comes into really sharp focus. Bankruptcy always means job losses, but there's a specific high-impact anecdote from Spain that highlights the moral and social controversy tied to this collapse.
You're talking about the Puerto Real plant.
The Puerto Real plant in Cadiz, Spain. This closure happened in February 2007, right in the middle of the Chapter 11 process.
And it wasn't a slow winding down, was it?
Not at all. It was a brutal, sudden closure. It resulted in 1,600 direct jobs being immediately eliminated. And the sources indicate that the regional impact meant over 2,500 indirect jobs, jobs in local suppliers and supporting businesses, were also lost as a direct result.
That's a regional economic shockwave. But the real controversy, the part that's truly shocking, stems from the fact that Delphi had specific agreements in place with the regional government.
They did. They had agreed to operate that plant until 2010.
They had a contract.
And this is the critical betrayal. Delphi had already received over 25 million euros from various public administrations.
And that money was for what, exactly?
That money was specifically given to guarantee worker jobs and support the operation until 2010. They took the public funds, and then they closed the plant 3 years early.
Wow. Taking public money under what are essentially false pretenses to guarantee jobs, and then immediately filing for bankruptcy and shutting down the facility. I imagine that led to some serious legal action against the company abroad.
Oh, absolutely. The regional government of Andalusia immediately announced it would begin legal action against Delphi for a blatant breach of local labor laws and contractual agreements. This wasn't just a business failure. It became a public legal and social controversy about corporate accountability across borders.
And it demonstrated that even Chapter 11 in the U.S. couldn't completely shield them from global repercussions.
Not at all. Meanwhile, back in the U.S., the legal drama during the reorganization process was just incredibly complex. Delphi was fighting everyone, creditors, customers, and even its own potential saviors.
Right. The bankruptcy was a continuous legal battlefield.
And to illustrate the high-stakes nature of it all, Delphi sued its own investors. Specifically, the sources mention Appaloosa Management LP in 2008.
They sued their own investors. Why?
They were suing for $2.5 billion in securities. They were basically trying to force through a plan that would facilitate their eventual exit from bankruptcy.
Suing the people who were supposed to be financing your survival. That's truly desperate maneuvering. And they weren't letting investors dictate the terms of the reorganization either.
No, they fought back hard. They successfully denied an investor's request for a damages cap of $250 million. They needed maximum flexibility to restructure.
So the key goal of Chapter 11 was just to shed debt and liabilities.
That's it. And the legal battles were all about defining what the new company would look like and, critically, how much of a haircut the old company's creditors would have to accept.
And as this was all happening, assets that weren't core to this new vision were being liquidated. You can see this piecemeal survival starting.
Yes. For example, in April of 2009, a company called Cool IT Systems acquired the assets of Delphi Thermal Liquid Cooling. This included key intellectual property and machinery.
Classic bankruptcy surgery.
Exactly, cutting away non-essential limbs to save the heart.
But the reorganization eventually led to the actual emergence of the new entity. In October 2009, we saw the formalized rebirth of Delphi. How did that structure change legally? This is important.
This is a crucial detail for understanding Aptiv's current legal status. A group of private investors purchased Delphi's core, valuable assets, the operational parts of the business that were still viable in generating revenue.
And what happened to the old bankrupt company, the one with all the debt?
The old company, the one holding the liabilities and all the legal baggage, was officially renamed DPH Holdings Corporation. Its stock was canceled, and it was eventually liquidated.
So DPH Holdings essentially became the garbage dump for the legal and financial liabilities of the past.
A perfect analogy. while the valuable operating assets were transferred to a clean, new entity.
The new Delphi.
Exactly. The new Delphi emerged clean, unburdened by the previous debt. And critically, it was incorporated in the United Kingdom, not the United States.
And that geographic pivot was the first major signal that the company's identity was no longer purely Detroit-centric.
Or tied to the legal jurisdiction where the scandal originated. They were getting out of town.
And just to tie up the Detroit loose ends, some of the non-core steering operations, those deep, heavy mechanical routes from Saginaw.
They were actually sold back to General Motors Company, which was the successor to the bankrupt Motors Liquidation Company.
The circle of life, I suppose.
In a way, this period, 2005 to 2010, was arguably the most critical and painful chapter. It wasn't just surviving bankruptcy, it was the forced realization that the legacy business model was utterly unsustainable.
It cleared the deck.
It cleared the deck, providing the capital and the clean structure necessary for the radical technological transformation that defined the next decade. And that's where the story gets exciting.
If Act 1 was birth and Act 2 was collapse, Act 3, starting around 2015, is the transformation. This is when the company decided its future wasn't in traditional components, but in becoming a genuine high-tech supplier.
And this strategic pivot was, well, it was less a choice and more an imperative. The leadership recognized that the entire automotive industry was about to be defined by electronics, software, connectivity, and eventually autonomy.
Right. Continuing to focus solely on high-volume, low-margin metal fabrication was a path to obsolescence.
A dead end. They needed to streamline those heavy manufacturing routes they inherited from GM.
And we see this streamlining really clearly with the 2015 divestiture of the thermal business unit. That unit, remember, was based on the old Harrison Radiator division. They sold it to Molly Baer GmbH.
And this wasn't just about shedding debt or a non-performing asset. This was a strategic trade-off. They took a profitable but non-core legacy manufacturing asset and sold it to a specialist.
So Molly Baer knew what they were doing with thermal systems.
Exactly. The merger itself created the second largest supplier of automotive thermal management systems globally. Everything from powertrain cooling to compressors. Delphi got capital and the market gained a better specialist. It was a classic addition by subtraction move.
So they're selling off the assets tied to heat, coolants, and heavy components, but at the same time, they're acquiring capabilities that speak directly to their new focus.
Connectivity and data.
Right. That's where the 2015 acquisition of Hellerman Titan comes in, for $1.7 billion.
And think about the contrast there. Selling radiators and buying sophisticated cable management and wiring accessories. They weren't buying engines or chassis parts, they were buying the expertise in connection systems.
Which is the physical foundation for the complex, shielded wiring harnesses you need for high-speed data transmission in connected and automated cars.
Precisely. This acquisition is so important because it underscores that foundational shift in where value is created. The value in a modern car isn't in the copper wire itself.
It's in how you manage the data flowing through that wire, ensuring integrity and speed.
Exactly. The signal was unmistakable. The profit and the future value were moving decisively from mechanical parts to the electrical and electronic architecture. And this commitment to advanced technology just accelerated rapidly after 2015.
We saw heavy investments in internal development. I remember announcements in December 2015 about significant improvements to their self-driving technology efforts. They were trying to play catch-up with Silicon Valley startups.
They had to, and they weren't afraid to look outside traditional automotive manufacturing for solutions either.
That's right. The partnership with Carbon in June 2016 is a prime example of breaking the mold.
Right. Carbon specialized in continuous liquid interface production, or CLIP, technology for 3D printing. And Delphi wasn't using this just for trivial prototypes.
How is CLIP even relevant to a component supplier at automotive scale? Was this just a smart PR move at the time, or was it a genuine technological necessity?
It was absolutely a necessity tied to speed and complexity. Traditional automotive component manufacturing relies on incredibly expensive, slow, and rigid tooling.
Right, the molds and dies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you need to make a small change to a wiring harness clip or a sensor housing, it costs millions and can take months. CLIP allowed them to rapidly prototype and iterate complex functional parts needed for advanced electronic systems.
So it dramatically sped up their development cycle for new, data-driven architecture.
Completely. It signaled that they were committed to next-generation manufacturing flexibility. And this continuous buildup of electronic architecture expertise and fast prototyping, It set the stage for the definitive move,
The moment they truly declare their intent to lead the autonomous race.
the defining moment, the one that truly changed the trajectory and the identity of the company. It was the massive step they took into autonomy in late 2017, the purchase of the self-driving startup Nutonomy for $450 million.
$450 million. That's a huge price tag for a startup, even for a company Delphi's size. What specific expertise did Nutonomy bring to the table that was worth that kind of investment?
Nutonomy provided the critical, immediate injection of software expertise that Delphi just completely lacked. They specialized in developing full-stack autonomous driving software, particularly for complex, high-density urban environments.
Board stuff.
The really hard stuff. Delphi already had the hardware, the radar, the cameras, the wiring harnesses, but they didn't have the brain. Nutonomy provided the fundamental software platform and, just as importantly, the talent pool needed to compete directly with companies like Waymo and Cruise.
So this wasn't an investment. This was an acquisition of core DNA.
It was a transplant, and this rapid, irreversible shift culminated in the final corporate metamorphosis in December 2017, which was marked by the name change itself.
The change to Aptiv PLC.
And it wasn't just cosmetic, it was the ultimate signal that the transformation was complete. It was the successful conclusion of the strategic divorce from their past. And to make the break entirely clean, they immediately divested their entire powertrain division and all its related aftermarket businesses.
So those legacy businesses, the AC Delco heritage, the engine management systems, they were all spun off into a separate new entity.
Yes, that division became Delphi Technologies, which focused on internal combustion engine components.
And that company was later acquired by BorgWarner.
It was. And this creates a beautifully clean narrative, doesn't it? The heavy, polluting, legacy powertrain business goes one way, absorbed by a traditional industrial giant.
While the sleek, technology-focused remainder, centered on software and connectivity, changed its name to Aptiv.
The name Active itself, I assume it was chosen to evoke adaptability and active technology. It feels very Silicon Valley. It's designed to sound completely un-Detroit.
That's precisely the goal. The company was trying to communicate its new mission: active safety, adaptive technology, connectivity, and autonomy. They were rebranding from a heavy metal manufacturer to a software and systems company, and the new name needed to reflect that completely different, forward-looking corporate mission.
And this pivot, it secured their survival and positioned them as a leader in the next generation of mobility.
So, we've arrived at modern Aptiv, a technology giant unburdened by its legacy powertrain divisions. The company is now defined by two core business segments, both focused entirely on the future of mobility.
And they're integrated systems, not standalone parts. That's the key.
All right. The first segment, which provides the foundation, is Signal and Power Solutions. While its lineage traces back to the old Packard Electric, its current scope is exponentially more complex.
It provides the complete physical nervous system of the modern connected vehicle.
When we say nervous system, what does that practically mean for a car designed today compared to, say, a Delphi car from 2004?
Well, it means they are integrating everything. The entire wiring and cable assemblies, the electrical centers, the junction boxes, and all the connection systems. But the key difference is data throughput.
The speed of the data.
Exactly. A modern car needs to move gigabits of data instantly for radar, for LiDAR, for high-definition camera feeds, and that requires high-speed shielded cables and ultra-reliable connection systems to prevent interference. Signal and Power Solutions is providing the physical infrastructure for all that data to flow.
And it's often custom designed for the specific OEM platform.
Almost always. They are essentially building the fiber optic network of the vehicle.
Okay, so if that's the infrastructure, the second segment is the application layer, the brain.
Absolutely. The second segment, and this is the high-growth, high-margin area, is advanced safety and user experience.
This is where the fruits of the Nutonomy acquisition live.
Precisely. It encompasses advanced software algorithms, complex sensing systems like high-resolution radar, powerful computing platforms, the user interface and infotainment systems, and, most importantly, automated driving capabilities.
And when we talk about automated driving, we are talking about the highest levels, SAE Level 4 and Level 5. Can you quickly clarify for the listener the distinction between those two and what Aptiv is targeting?
Certainly. The Society of Automotive Engineers, or SAE, classifies autonomy on different levels. Level 4 means the vehicle can handle all driving tasks, but only under specific conditions.
Like a geofenced area in a city or a certain weather.
Right. And in those conditions, the human is not required to take over. Level 5 is the ultimate goal, fully universal autonomy, capable of driving anywhere, anytime, under any condition that a human driver could.
And Aptiv is pushing for both.
They are actively pushing development toward both, but
Okay.
aiming for commercial level 4 deployment first. That's the realistic next step.
And their biggest commitment to reaching those levels was the autonomous driving power play with Hyundai Motor Group. This wasn't a small contract. This was the formation of a massive, dedicated joint venture.
A massive strategic alignment. It was announced in August 2019 and finalized in March 2020. The sheer scale is just eye-watering, a $4 billion joint venture.
$4 billion, with Aptiv and Hyundai each holding a 50% stake.
A 50-50 split.
Why Hyundai, though? Why not team up with a traditional U.S. or European OEM? What specific competitive advantage did each partner bring to warrant a 50-50 split on such a huge venture?
It's a great question. Aptiv brought the deep software, the sensing, and the system integration expertise. That's the new autonomy legacy. And they have the experience of developing safety platforms globally for dozens of automakers.
And Hyundai.
Hyundai brought the mass market manufacturing scale, the deep OEM validation and production expertise, and the global distribution channels. Aptiv is fantastic at designing the brain. Hyundai is world-class at building the body at scale.
So a 50-50 split ensures neither partner dominates, but both are equally incentivized to make the Level 4 platform a commercial success.
That's the theory. They located the headquarters in Boston, which is also interesting, intentionally establishing it away from Detroit, Silicon Valley, and Seoul.
A neutral ground for tech. And this venture was formally named Motional in August 2020.
Yeah, and Motional is arguably Aptiv's most visible and most important future technology bet. They're not just selling parts to Hyundai. They are co-developing the core IP for autonomous mobility.
And we saw the results of this pretty early on. In January 2021, Aptiv released a new automated driving platform that was specifically designed to be applied to various vehicles, not just Hyundai's.
And, crucially, capable of being upgraded wirelessly, over the air.
That over-the-air update capability is essential for Level 4 systems, right?
Oh, it's non-negotiable. If you're running a commercial fleet of robo-taxis, you can't recall them to a service center every time the software needs an improvement or a security patch. The ability to manage vehicle systems digitally throughout their life cycle is a massive differentiator.
So, if Motional provides the autonomous platform, Aptiv clearly recognized a need to deepen its bench in foundational software, the stuff underneath everything, which led to a key acquisition in 2022.
That was the purchase of Wind River Systems. Now, for many listeners, Wind River might not be a familiar name, but they are absolutely foundational in the world of high-reliability, mission-critical systems. They're known for their real-time operating systems, or RTOS.
What exactly is a real-time operating system? Why is it mission-critical in a car environment, as opposed to, say, the OS running on my laptop?
An RTOS is designed to guarantee a response within a very strict time constraint. We're talking about zero latency. If you hit the brakes in a traditional car, the mechanical link is instant. In a self-driving car, when the computer sees a hazard and initiates the braking or steering maneuver, the operating system must process that command in milliseconds. The system cannot afford to pause for a second to defragment a memory file, which your laptop might do at any time.
I see. So there's no spinning beach ball of death.
Never. Wind River provides the secure, reliable foundation for safety-critical functions where human life depends on guaranteed instant execution. This acquisition confirms Aptiv is now a top-tier, vertically integrated software and systems company.
And finally, we have to trace their remarkable corporate mobility one last time. From the UK incorporation after the bankruptcy, they relocated their headquarters to Ireland in 2018.
And the sources confirm yet another geographical shift. They've reportedly moved to Schaffhausen, Switzerland in early 2025.
It's relentless. The reason cited, perhaps unsurprisingly given the scale of their multinational operations and desire for optimization, was overtax.
Right.
Can you provide a little more context on what this kind of corporate re-domiciling achieves for a company like Aptiv?
Well, for a company operating globally with billions in revenue and very complex IP streams, like those associated with Motional and Wind River, choosing a strategic headquarters location is absolutely crucial for optimizing their effective corporate tax rate.
And Switzerland is a good place for that.
Switzerland, with its favorable holding company regimes and its network of international treaties, often provides a highly efficient jurisdiction for a company whose value is derived mostly from intellectual property and licensing, rather than just physical manufacturing.
So this final move It really just reinforces the transformation.
Completely. From a region manufacturer tied to Detroit to a nimble, globally optimized technology giant seeking the best possible environment for IP monetization.
Aptiv's story is one of spectacular strategic success and profitable reinvention. But as we said at the start, that success was purchased at a cost. We can't understand the full picture without acknowledging the painful and controversial legacy they left behind,
Not at all.
starting with the very financial misconduct that triggered the collapse in the first place.
The accounting misconduct from the 2005-2006 period is essential context because it demonstrates the immense pressure the company was under. Delphi disclosed improper reporting of rebates, credits, or other supplier payments, requiring a fundamental restatement of earnings.
That went back 6 years, between 1999 and 2004.
6 years. So the company was operating under false pretenses for almost its entire life as an independent entity.
And then it got worse.
Yes. Then they had a subsequent massive restatement in June 2006, where they increased their reported 2004 net loss by a significant $65 million. These financial issues, the intentional obfuscation of their true financial state, were the immediate catastrophic catalyst for the Chapter 11 filing.
Beyond the financial reckoning, a legal shadow remained, connecting the new company to its parent, GM, through physical products. The sources mention Aptiv's involvement in the ongoing serious lawsuit against GM from 2013.
The notorious ignition switches.
Right, manufactured for the Chevrolet Cobalt.
This is a classic example of legacy product liability. Aptiv, when they were Delphi, manufactured those switches. The original design was alleged to be defective, leading to serious accidents and deaths.
And even though Aptiv had divested so many parts of its old business,
Liability issues tied to potentially defective components, especially safety-critical components, they do not simply disappear with a name change or a bankruptcy filing. It shows how difficult it is to fully divorce yourself from the physical past.
but perhaps the most tragic, the most enduring, and the most morally challenging controversy is the pension crisis that stemmed directly from the 2009 bankruptcy agreement.
This is a profound social cost of that corporate reorganization.
It is a devastating example, and it requires us to slow down and really consider the full impact here. As part of emerging from Chapter 11, the company was allowed to surrender its defined benefit pension obligations to a U.S. government agency.
The Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation, or PBGC.
What does that process mean for the individual employee who'd spent decades working for GM and then Delphi?
It means their expected guaranteed retirement income was drastically reduced. While the PBGC steps in to ensure employees receive some benefit, it is often significantly capped, especially for high earners or those with longer service records.
So the new company was able to shed a liability worth billions of dollars.
Billions. But the employees were left with a massive shortfall in their retirement planning, especially compared to the promises that were made to them during their working lives.
And the impact was huge. We're not talking about a handful of executives here. We're talking about a group of about 20,000 salaried employees who were affected.
20,000. And these people were concentrated primarily in the traditional automotive heartland: Ohio, Michigan, New York, and Indiana.
These are the people who, for decades, built the components that kept the company running.
And they have been engaged in litigation ever since, seeking the full restoration of their pension rights. This is an ongoing legal battle that really speaks to the fundamental fairness of the bankruptcy process.
It's a profound moral paradox.
It is. The company gets a clean slate to pursue billions in autonomous software, but the employees who built the foundation are still fighting in court for their basic retirement security. They were deemed non-essential when the company needed to shed costs, yet their knowledge and their labor were essential for building the initial enterprise.
That's the tension, isn't it? The company was able to legally wipe the slate clean and pivot to a high-growth, technology-focused future, while the human debt incurred by that past transition remains outstanding and in continuous litigation.
And finally, we have to look at the environmental legacy of the original Delphi Corporation. This speaks perhaps most starkly to the transition from heavy, dirty manufacturing to clean digital technology.
Right. The research findings from the University of Massachusetts Amherst in 2002.
Yes. They allege that Delphi Corp was the 21st largest corporate producer of air pollution in the entire United States.
The 21st largest. That is a hard data snapshot of their past industrial identity just before the bankruptcy.
And to quantify that scale, the list of toxic emissions is quite sobering. It illustrates the sheer scale of the chemical and manufacturing processes they were running.
What are we talking about here?
Well, the research cited known toxic substances being released, including asbestos at 542 pounds per year,
Asbestos.
chromium compounds at over 1,000 pounds per year, and lead compounds, a severe neurological toxin, at 8,466 pounds per year.
It's a lot of lead.
It's a lot. They were also emitting sulfuric acid at 17,600 pounds per year.
And beyond those specifically toxic emissions, what about just the massive volume of industrial emissions?
When looking at the sheer volume, the research cited glycol ethers at 111,520 pounds per year,
Wow.
and hydrochloric acid at 80,000 pounds per year. This paints a stark, quantifiable contrast. A company historically defined by heavy chemical use, high-volume machining, and significant toxic output has now successfully pivoted.
Right. They've pivoted to focus on clean, digital, safety-enhancing technology like software and sensing systems. That transition from being a top-tier corporate polluter in 2002 to developing Level 5 self-driving systems less than 20 years later is perhaps the most incredible and most ethically challenging part of this entire story.
The company truly transformed its physical footprint.
So, synthesizing this incredible journey, Aptiv's life can really be viewed in three distinct, dramatic acts.
It can. Act 1, the birth as a massive industrial GM component manufacturer defined by scale and dependency.
Act 2, the near-death experience, triggered by accounting fraud, characterized by massive job losses, bankruptcy, and the shedding of core liabilities like pensions.
And Act 3, the radical, profitable resurrection as a software, connectivity, and autonomy powerhouse, symbolized by the name change and the move of the corporate headquarters far, far away from its industrial origins.
The success story boils down entirely to rapid, decisive, strategic pivoting.
No question. They systematically shed the low-margin legacy manufacturing assets, all the heavy metal, and aggressively invested in foundational software through acquisitions like Wind River.
And they made monumental moves in autonomy through Nutonomy and that $4 billion Motional joint venture with Hyundai.
The central theme here is adaptability. Adaptability in the face of tectonic shifts in mobility technology. Aptiv represents a prime, highly documented example of how a major global company must strategically restructure, often very painfully, to survive industry disruption.
And they successfully moved their corporate identity from heavy metal stamping and environmental liabilities to high-speed data architecture and digital safety systems.
And here's why this matters directly to you, the learner. Aptiv is not a theoretical company. They are a key economic player. You are already driving, or will soon drive, a vehicle that relies on Aptiv's sophisticated advanced safety and user experience systems.
Their signal and power solutions are the literal high-speed highways for the data that keep your car safe and connected.
They are inside the technology that is defining the next decade of personal transportation and the entire shift toward electrification and autonomy.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought. Aptiv, through Motional, is now developing SAE Level 4 and 5 autonomous technologies. These are systems designed to potentially eliminate human error, dramatically reduce traffic accidents, and fundamentally save lives through technical innovation.
A laudable goal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But this triumph of digital safety was paid for by the significant social and environmental controversies of its past. That includes sacrificing the pensions of 20,000 salaried employees and leaving behind a measurable legacy of environmental pollution.
So considering this rapid and successful evolution and the deep unresolved controversies surrounding its transition, what is the ultimate moral responsibility of a massive multinational corporation like Aptiv as it pivots from polluting the physical environment to dominating the digital architecture of our future transportation?
Does technical innovation and future life-saving capability absolve the cost incurred during that necessary, painful transition?
That is something for you to mull over as you think about the future of mobility.
Thank you for joining us for the deep dive.
See you next time.